I'll be really brief today because there's one point I want to talk about is
Sure.
When you're the general manager, man, and you want all the credit, you get the good and the bad. And you're the one who's negotiating deals for every single soul. No player puts a contract in front of them and Jerry just endorses it. Jerry wants everything to go through him, per his own words. So when you go up there and you say, I don't know anything about Cooper Rush's incentive deals, that is one of the you don't with your people's money. That is like the number one thing, that and insult their family.
Yeah,
don't fuck with their money.
Somebody said this the other day, where it's like, man, this is nasty work if he doesn't pay Cooper. And I thought they were going to pay him anyway. I thought he'd play a little bit and they give him, but to see that he didn't even get a chance to suit up, and then they're acting like they didn't know, and if he truly didn't know, damn, that's cold blooded. That's cold blooded, because if you really wanted to make that move to not pay him, you should have did it 2 games ago when you were eliminated to play Trey Lance for the remainder of the season. You had an excuse.
You could have just said right there, hey, I'm not aware of his contract, but I guarantee you I will make sure he gets taken care of. You could have squashed it right then and there. It's just
not being aware still was a problem.
Pirates do.
You know what I'm saying? Because you're the general manager. Yeah.
But I don't know what's worse, you not knowing or you doing it deliberately and then acting like you have no idea. Because that is like that's the shit the Pittsburgh Pirates pull. That's a small market, cheap ass team that last year there was a guy named Rowdy Tellez. He needed like 3 more at bats at the last game of the year to get a $200,000 bonus, and the Pirates cut him so they didn't have to pay it. Took him out of the lineup so it didn't happen. And now that's America's team, man. It's just, yeah. And the last thing I'll say is, hey, if anyone in here watches the show Landman, hey, you see our fearless general manager in there being a great cameo actor, once again showing that he doesn't give a flying fuck about this entire team. Hey, that entire family, they treat it like Jerry says his biggest Super Bowl is that he gets to be around his kids and work with them every day. Y'all, he's treating this like he's building Stephen Jones a Pinewood Derby car, and he doesn't give a fuck about us. That is what this is right now. And if you were going to go into this offseason and sell this fan base, and you're running back some bullshit retread, or God forbid, Fat Garrett, man, I don't know how you can recover from that.
It sounds like they want to, but it'll come down to the two terms, really. And if they can come to an agreement, then yeah, McCarthy will be back. But I don't know. Again, being enlightened about the new agent and who they represent, I feel like Mike is going to want to get the bag.
He should get the bag. And like, again, last thing, I said it the last thing I'll say is, Mike, if you are out there and you somehow hear this, for once in your life, be a man. You don't take money from these types of people, because when you take money from these types of people, they use it against you. They will humiliate you. You're selling your dignity. You don't do business with people like this, because they will never respect you. And I don't care what people say about it. Respect is something that you should always strive for, no matter what lane of business you're in.
That's real.
Never sell your dignity. But other than that, Sky, once again, congratulations. Can't wait to hear this show, and to the Jones, eat shit, you.
I have my thoughts on Mike. But one of my main issues with Mike McCarthy is when we get to the playoffs, we look a certain way. Every time. And these are just a handful of statistics that frustrate me. And I've brought this up with you guys before, specifically after the playoff loss last year. Now, great regular season record. There's a lot of people that say, oh, we could bring Mike back. He's 49-25 in the regular season. Absolutely. I get it. Right. 1-3 though in the playoffs. And they averaged 6.6 points per game in the first half of those 3 playoff losses. Now, if you want to look at the first or the beginning of the one they won, it didn't start off great either. I don't believe they scored a point in the first quarter of that game. So he is notorious for getting off to extremely slow starts with this team. in the playoffs. And then the 53 yards per game from running backs also bug me, because that goes to the point of being one-dimensional once you get into the playoffs. And I've said it to you many times. You cannot be one-dimensional every time. There's going to be times, you have to lean on the defense or lean on the run or lean on the quarterback. But every time it's quarterback or bust, it's pass game or bust. That's a difficult task. And I don't think he has that type of identity in his DNA, which is why I'm willing to take that risk with a different coach that may provide that. Let Mike McCarthy go try to build up the Jags, man. You know what I mean? Let Mike McCarthy go try to. They would love 49-25 in Jacksonville. I'm not saying I want to be 25-49, you know? But we know the standards here are a little bit different. And if the general manager is not changing, then the next guy is going to be the head coach who has to find a way.
But I also, the most important thing, Sky, and this is my last point, is that I think this has a lot to do with the quarterback. And the quarterback only having 3 more years left on his deal. And what is it going to look like for your quarterback coming back from a pretty major injury, having to completely go through an install, which again, like he's coming back from an injury, go through an install of.
I think T.I. might have went under a bridge.
I think it might have something to do with that, guy.
That's an interesting point that I've heard brought up a few times, and I don't think you're necessarily, wrong there in that you don't want to have your quarterback going through all these different offenses or what have you. Same thing about the defense, right? I talked about it the other day.
Agree.
You got defensive coordinators just swapping in and out over the last number of years. However, there's also something to coordinators coming in year one. You see success. Like I look at Baker Mayfield. He lost the coordinator, right? And then they bring in a guy from one of them trees, Liam Cohen, and boom, he picks up where he left off, if not better. The offense is actually better this year. Joe Brady stepped in for who was it that got fired? Ken Dorsey, and completely revamped what they were doing. And next year's Josh Allen has been way more efficient, even though he was always, a baller, but he's been way more efficient. So I look at it this way, I say, okay, my quarterback is a top 10 type quarterback. I want to make sure I get a guy that can get the best out of him in this offense. And if you want to use, hey, I got the quarterback coming back with the injury, and I don't want to put too much on him. Well, guess what? This offense is quite literally designed to put so much on the quarterback. How about I get an offensive system that takes a little pressure off of the quarterback? And I think that will require a new offensive philosophy, because I don't think Mike is going to change up if he returns, and it sounds like he will.
No, dude. And you pose valid points as well, and so here's the thing about when you talk about the Bucs, when you talk about some of these teams, you talk about Philly bringing Kellen in and things like that, and some of these teams seeing success with a new OC right away. Guess what? They also draft weapons.
Mm-hmm.
They also attack free agency, because if you think that Bucky Irvin hasn't made life easier for Baker Mayfield, you're crazy. If you don't think that offensive line for the Bucs that they have somewhat invested in makes things better for them, you're crazy. And I think that has a lot to do with it as well. Is like, it's going to be easier on a play caller if they have the weapons. So Dallas, if you are going to bring in a new OC, let's find the proper weapon.
Let's talk about Jordan Lewis too. J. Lou, man, I think Jordan was one of the most consistent defensive players, really, you had all year, and he's gonna have a lot of suitors for him in free agency, by the way. But if you remember, so? I think so. Let's talk about that in a second. But if you remember in the offseason, J. Lou, when he talked about, they asked him, hey man, how do you feel about this new scheme? He was one of the ones that stepped up and said, this scheme is going to be better for him. He said it's going to be better for everybody, but he is like, you just watch, basically. And I thought he played the best, and he was the most consistent. He was the veteran voice in that room. He won some type of media award for the team, but he was a rock. He was a rock, and he was steady. See what I did there?
No, I actually touched base with what's up? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was singing. No. Don't worry about me.
Who are you singing?
Rock steady. But go ahead, man. Yeah, he was rock. He was steady, and he's going to be a priority, I think, in this offseason.
No. I agree. He needs to be a priority. Guys, I'm gonna tell you. Just do yourself a favor. How many times did you watch film and break down the other team and say, "Oh man, CeeDee Lamb gonna cook this guy in the slot"? How many times did you do that?
Yeah.
How many times did you say a team's nickel corner was a weakness?
Yep.
I literally can probably think of 6 or 7 times where I was like, yeah, CeeDee Lamb, he can't run with CeeDee Lamb. He can't run with CeeDee Lamb. And a lot of people can't run with CeeDee Lamb. But when you look at the nickel corner for a lot of teams, I don't know what it is. Listen, it's not that good. It's not that good. A lot of people prioritize having good corners on the boundary. But if you're looking at this NFL, the way that the McVays and these guys have changed football, a lot of the matchups are found in the slot, manipulating the slot, finding matchups, causing conflict as you talk about in the slot. And Jordan Lewis, like, I remember talking to him even my first year, and he explained to me, because I was still learning, explained to me how extensive the responsibilities are for the nickel corner. You are literally an extension of the 7. And you don't, in the way that, I mean, Jordan Lewis is maybe one of the smallest guys on the team. He sets the edge better than some of your defensive ends.
He was your best run defender last year at the end of the season.
And it's obviously, this is not, I mean, a lot of people, because I tweeted like, hey, you need to re-sign him. And I had some people being like, re-sign him for what? And I'm like, this isn't just this year. He finished off being, to me, your best corner finishing last year. And he just brought to this year with a whole new scheme. And so for me, I don't think that what he does for the team and what he is for the team can be like measured for real, Sky. I think he's a foundational piece. I also think that he's an example to the young men in the locker room by how he leads his life and how he is. He's a family man. He's charitable. He's an honorable person. I'm telling you. And if you've had any conversations with him, you know the type of person he is. So he's a foundational piece of your locker room to me. And I think that should make him a priority, Scott. I really do believe that. They
asked him in if you go look at the I don't want to say exit interview, but his last interview in the locker room, they asked him straight up, hey, you know, you're a free agent. Do you want to come back? He said, look, I'm going to train. I'm going to do a lot of training. I'm going to let the agent handle all of that. But he said, hopefully it is back here. I'm going to say this right now. Unless you're planning on moving Deron Bland into the slot, if it's not Jordan Lewis, you need to bring in a nickel cornerback. A veteran nickel cornerback, equal or better. I don't think you can mess around with that position because of the uncertainty in that room. So, I'm not saying it has to be J. Lou, although I hope it is J. Lou. But I haven't went and looked at the other nickels that are available. I know a few years ago, one of my favorite nickels was Mike Hilton, who went on to go into the Super Bowl with the Bengals. He struggled a bit this year, but he kind of reminded me of J. Lou, a blitzing guy. He was very active around the line of scrimmage, some sacks, some tackles for losses. I feel like you got to be able to replace him with a veteran. You can go ahead and grab a guy in college, right? Like the kid from Michigan. And let's say they want to move him inside or put him on the boundary, and now they got Deron Bland inside. I could live with that. But you need to either replace him with Bland in the slot or a veteran, because he was that important. I think he's that important moving forward, because you mentioned it, made a great point. Teams are taking advantage of that slot corner, and there are not 32 slot corners that are as good as Jordan Lewis. This just isn't.